Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the TowSmart Trailer Hitch receiver here on our 2023 Hyundai Palisade. The Hyundai Palisade is a great family vehicle. You can load up all your family, but once you have all your family in there, you might not have enough room for all the gear that you need to bring with you when you're going out on those adventures. So that leaves you with the question of how you're going to get it there with you. So one option is to throw a roof rack on the roof of your vehicle, but roof racks can be pretty costly and doesn't really give you everything you need, because then now you have to buy a platform rack as well. So we keep adding on cost after cost here, and our roof might not be able to hold that much weight. So the other alternative here, which is the better of the two in my opinion, is going to be a trailer hitch receiver. So that way you can throw on a cargo carrier or tow a smaller trailer behind your vehicle, hauling all that gear. Our trailer hitch receiver tube is going to be a 2-inch by 2-inch opening here, which is the most common for all of the accessories that are out there on the market. Now there are some 1 1/4-inch accessories that you would need a reducer sleeve for, but you can easily pick that up here at eTrailer, and that'll just slide into your receiver tube opening, and then you can slot in your 1 1/4-inch accessory and pop in your hitch pin and clip. Now this is going to have a 5,000-pound gross towing weight capacity, which is going to be the force when we're pulling a trailer. So you will want to make sure that just because this has that high of a rating, that what your vehicle is able to handle as well. So definitely double check that owner's manual, figure out what your gross towing weight capacity is going to be for the vehicle, and make sure you're staying under that, so that way you don't damage anything else. You can also run into some issues when it comes to suspension. If you start overloading your vehicle, it's going to start sagging a whole lot in the back. You're going to run into some steering, handling, and then braking power issues if you start overloading your vehicle. So it's super important that you really make sure you know what you're hauling along with you. Now when we are hauling around all of those accessories, or maybe towing that trailer, there's a couple of measurements that are going to be pretty important to us. So the first one's going to be our ground clearance. We want to make sure that the shank of our accessory isn't going to end up scraping the ground if we're hitting a really steep incline or decline. So for that, we're going to measure from the ground up to the inside of the top edge of our receiver tube opening, which is looking at right around 13.5 inches. Now we really want to see a minimum of 12 inches, so we are about 1.5 inches over that. So we know we're not going to need an adapter. Now if you were sitting a little bit lower, you're below that 12 inches, that's where you might need to get an adapter to raise up that shank just a little bit higher, but to keep in mind that you will be then lowering your capacity by 50%, because now we're shifting that weight further out and we're leveraging it further away from the trailer hitch receiver. So that's another thing to keep in mind when it comes to capacities. Now the other part of this is going to be if we have a folding accessory, which most bike racks and cargo carriers can typically fold up, so that way you can decrease the overall length of your vehicle when that accessory is on there. And for that, what we want to measure from is the center of our hitch pin hole to the furthest point out on our fascia, which is right here at the back of our bumper. And that's looking at right around maybe 3.5, 4 inches. So what we'd want to do is just go to the shank of our accessory, and we would do the same kind of measurement, but we would be going from the center of the hitch pin hole in the shank to the closest part of that accessory once it is folded up. And then we can come over, match it up to our vehicle, make sure that when we do close that up, it's not going to end up touching it and scratching our fascia. Now if we're going to be towing a trailer, there's one other component that's going to be needed. At minimum, we will need to have a 4-pole wiring harness just so that we can transfer our lights. Now, if that trailer has brakes, we are going to need to upgrade that 4-pole wire harness up to a 7-way wire harness. So if that is something you plan on doing, definitely feel free to reach out to us if you have some questions on what's going to be the right kit for your specific vehicle. Now, when you're towing a trailer, you're also going to have safety chains. So one thing I like to do is just kind of check how they fit inside of the tow loops, because on some trailer hitches, they don't really have a great tow loop, and the larger clevis style hook doesn't really want to fit in there too well. So you can run into some issues where maybe you can't safely tow that trailer just because the tow hooks don't fit it. So on ours today with the TowSmart, super easy, even with the larger clevis style. It's popping in both ways, no problem. I'm not getting bound up on anything. And same thing with our S-style hook, which is usually on your smaller, lighter weight trailers. So we know that no matter what style trailer we have, we should be in good shape. Now the hitch isn't going to come with a hitch pin and clip, so you will want to make sure that you pick up a 5/8 hitch pin and clip, and preferably one that's anti-rattle and also locking, so that way you can prevent anyone from taking off with your accessory when you're not around your vehicle and you have it locked into the trailer hitch. As far as installation goes, the Hyundai Palisade is honestly one of the easiest cars out there on the market to put a trailer hitch on. Now, TowSmart does theirs a little bit differently. They don't hand you paper instructions. They give you a QR code, and this is the hardware bag. This is where all of my hardware came in. All I had to do was look up that QR code. Now, if for some reason that QR code was damaged, or maybe you didn't get the same bag, maybe you got a replacement bag or something like that where it didn't have it, you can easily just go on their website, look up the specific model number for that hitch, and then just print off the instructions or use your phone and flip through it. A lot of people nowadays don't really want to have to hang on to the paperwork. They can just easily scroll through their phone and get through all the instructions there. But like I said, Hyundai Palisade's super easy to install on, so this is something you definitely don't need a lift for. You don't need any specialty tools. Realistically, all you need specialty-wise is just that torque wrench. So if you don't have a torque wrench, you can definitely pick one up here at eTrailer, or you can reach out to your local auto parts store. A lot of the time they'll have some kind of rental tool program where you can easily just pick up a torque wrench, borrow it, and then return it and not be charged for it. So with that being said, if this is something you don't feel like you have time to do yourself, or you just don't want to do it yourself, definitely feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. If you're wanting to do this yourself but still need a little bit of help and want a walkthrough of it, feel free to stick around and I'll walk you through the process. To start off our install, we want to open up our rear hatch. We're going to grab a flathead screwdriver and we're going to come and pop out the cap that's covering up our spare tire. We'll then take a 13/16 or a 21mm socket and we can lower our spare tire down. Our next step is going to be lowering our exhaust, but before we do that, we want to make sure we have some support for it. So I'm going to take a cam strap, I'm going to run it over one of our coil springs and then over to the other one as well. Tighten that up just a bit, and we're going to have a couple rubber isolators to remove. First one right here at the rear of the vehicle, and there's going to be one on the right side of our exhaust, up over here, right here, I see it, and one more right back here at our suspension. So before I go and pry on that, I'm going to take some silicone lubricant and we'll just spray that in there and help transition this out. And there's a couple of different tools you can use. I have a tool specifically designed for helping pop off those rubber isolators. You could also just use a pry bar. It just kind of depends on what you really have to pry against. In our case with this one, I'm just going to pry this straight out. Drop that back. Over here we just got the one prong to deal with. You can get it from inside real easy. And then just our last one right here. So now our exhaust has been lowered and it's being supported by our cam strap. From there we have a cover over on our passenger side that we're going to drop out of the way. Sometimes it doesn't really interfere with the hitch, sometimes it does. I'm just going to go ahead and take it off anyway just to make it easier for us and give us more room so that we can get our wrench in there to torque down our hardware. Now this is going to have 3 push pins, and then it's going to have 2 nuts that we're going to need to take off. On these plastic nuts up top, they'll just keep spinning, so you do need to keep pressure on it as you're loosening that. So kind of hold down on the plastic too as you're pulling that out, and I'll get these popped out and I can tell you exactly what that socket's going to be in just a sec. I'm going to start with the push pins because, like I said, the plastic nuts are going to want to fight you. And for this, you can use a trim panel removal tool. Looks just like one of these guys. I sometimes find the thinner flathead screwdrivers are easier to kind of get that initial pop out. And now for the sockets, you can use either a 9/16 or 14mm to get this off. just set this to the side. Now at this point, we want to spray in a little bit of lubricant again, and we're going to take a wire brush and we're going to clean out the weld nuts that are in our frame. So on both sides, both the driver and passenger, you'll see these two holes on the bottom of the frame. Just get your spray, spray some in there, grab your brush, and you can kind of run it through. And just make sure you got all the threads cleaned out. It makes it a whole lot easier when you go to hold the hitch up and put your hardware in if it's not fighting you the entire time you're trying to thread the bolts in. All right, now with our second set of hands here, we got Brad, and we're gonna lift our hitch up over our exhaust, slide it up against our frame. Now we're gonna have one bolt on the exhaust side to pass through horizontally, and that's gonna be the bronze one. The silver ones we'll throw over on the passenger side, or the driver's side, sorry. Now this is a bit of a fight because of the heat shield here. What I like to do is try to tap the washer through first, all the way to the end, and then try and push it so we're not fighting that across the heat shield. Then once you get it in, just kind of pinched into place, you can take your hammer and kind of just pop it the rest of the way. That's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to also grab a little bit of a punch here. All right, we'll have to draw that in some more. There's a little bit of a flex in the hitch, but it's not fully coming over, but we are over on this side. So we got our hardware in, thanks Brad. Now on the opposite side where our nut's gonna be, we're gonna have another conical tooth washer, just like we had on the bolt head side. Pop that on, and then we'll have a nut we're gonna put on as well. We're not going to go too tight just yet because below we're also going to have two vertical bolts that are going to tie into those weld nuts in our frame rail. And you can see right now we're having a little bit of an issue. We're kind of coming up right where that weld nut is, so I will have to kind of play with this, and that's why you want to leave that loose, so that way you can kind of move it around. All right, now we're going to take our M10 hardware and another conical tooth washer. You'll notice these ones have a much smaller hole to match up with the sizing of our bolt, and then we can shift our hitch over, and we're going to get these slotted in. Once we get those in a few threads, we can then come back with our 17mm socket and snug them down. Now for our horizontal bolts, we'll be using a 3/4 inch or 19mm socket and wrench, and we'll snug those down as well. All right, now it's time to torque everything down. So I'm going to start with my M12 bolt. That's that one bronze one that we put in on the passenger side going horizontal. We then also have our M10 bolts, and then also our 1/2 inch hardware, which is the two silver ones, going through horizontally in the frame rail on the driver's side. So make sure that you are doing each specific torque setting for each one of these different bolts. All right, now we have all of our fasteners properly torqued down. It's time to reinstall our plastic trim piece that goes in the corner over here. Now there is one problem with that. Right in this area, we're gonna make a little notch because our bolt, this hardware right back here, is rubbing up against that and preventing us from being able to put it back on. So I'm just gonna notch out a little, about an inch, maybe 1/2 inch round hole right here maybe. Just enough to get that bolt passed through it, and then we'll be all good to go. All right, we'll see if that notch is enough. If we need to trim out more, we can. Looks like it's good to me, but it looks like the other one is also fighting us. Now this one is also pretty optional if you want to cut it, because the bolt kind of lines up right with this little lip right here. If you want, you can cut it off, but you could bend it enough to get it up over the nut and then get it on there. I try to avoid cutting as much as I can. but I think in this case I might just trim it just a tiny bit. I'll probably only cut just this lip right here. Alright, we're going to pop this back up into place. You can push in one of the push pins real quick to help hold it up. And we'll take our little plastic nuts, and once again I'm using a 14mm socket, or a 9/16 would also work. We'll just thread that back on. Kind of want to push on it too, because this kind of bites into it. Now that we have our trim back up, it's time to get our exhaust back in place too. So we're going to get those popped back into our rubber isolators. Remember, you got 3 of them to do. One back at the axle, one just over by your passenger rear wheel, which is probably the harder of the 3. And then one last one back here, which is the easiest of them, I'd say, because all you do is lift up and slide it right back on. Now with that back being supported, we can remove our cam strap, and that is going to do it for our installation. That's going to do it for our look at and installation of the TowSmart Trailer Hitch Receiver here on our 2023 Hyundai Palisade. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right trailer hitch receiver for your Hyundai Palisade, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out in your journey.